Fear of the Millionaire was exposed. A new waitress made an incredible, life-changing revelation. The sun peeked through the diner's old windows, casting a golden glow on the worn linoleum floor. As Jessica filled cups with steaming coffee, the rich aroma mixed with the sweet scent of cinnamon rolls pulled in a crowd of regulars. Laughter bounced off the walls, and here, in this small-town diner, dreams were whispered over breakfast plates. But today, unease lingered in the air. Whispers danced from table to table. Alan, the millionaire, was coming to Maplewood to buy the diner. A wave of anxiety washed over Jessica, thoughts swirling like the steam from her coffee pot. This was more than a job, it was home. Jessica, 34, a devoted waitress and single mother, worked tirelessly, juggling her responsibilities with evident love. Every shift meant putting food on the table for her 14-year-old daughter, Emma, whose bright smile kept Jessica's heart full despite the constant worry of bills piling up. She wiped down tables armed with hope, determined to afford Emma a world of opportunities, even if her own dreams felt locked away in the kitchen's pantry. But the news of Alan sent a shiver down her spine. Old Mr. Thompson, the town's unofficial historian, leaned in conspiratorially. He's gonna tear down everything we love about this place. The chatter turned to fear. The diner wasn't just a stop for food, it was a refuge of shared stories and laughter, a symbol of their close-knit community. Then, like a movie scene turned reality, she finally met Alan. He stood there, lean and tall, his tired eyes revealing a depth of struggle she hadn't expected. A veteran returning from the battlefield, his demeanor spoke of isolation, his wealth seemingly a burden. As they clashed over his intentions for the diner, her heart raced. "You don't understand what this place means to us," she exclaimed, the fire in her voice surprising even herself. Yet, as they exchanged heated words, she found herself thawing to his plight. His loneliness, contrasting sharply with her daily hustle, wove their lives into a tapestry of resilience. She fought for survival while he dealt with the weight of wealth and emotional scars. Alan proposed financial support for the diner, but his conditions clawed at her inside, stretching her values to a breaking point. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Caught between loyalty to her community and the chance for survival, Jessica's heart ached. Alan's access to dreams felt like a bitter pill. So she rallied her fellow townsfolk, organizing a communal meal at the diner, inviting everyone, including Alan. This meal wasn't just about food, it was about healing, understanding, and maybe breaking down those guarded walls they built around wealth and worth. As the day approached, nervousness spiraled in her gut. Could a simple meal shift the tides? Would they truly listen to each other? As townspeople filed in, the din of chatter filled the diner, an anxious energy practically crackling like static. Jessica stood before them, tears brimming, a heart laid bare, urging them to consider the treasure they possessed in unity. And just as Alan spoke of his desolation among the riches, their collective breaths hitched in attention. A sudden interruption ripped through the air, shaking their newfound connection to its very core, leaving them teetering on the edge of vulnerability and collective reckoning. Just as Alan's voice reached its crescendo, the front door swung open violently, and a blast of cold wind swept through the diner. The chatter faltered, and all eyes turned toward the entrance. A figure stood silhouetted against the bright outside light, breathless and disheveled. It was Emma, Jessica's daughter, face flushed with what looked like panic. "Mom," she shouted, her voice cutting through the sudden stillness. "You need to come quick. It's Dad, he's here." The air thickened with tension as Jessica's heart dropped. Memories of her past rushed back, and the uncomfortable silence felt like a weight pressing on her chest. She hadn't expected to see Michael, Emma's father, in this moment. Not during a crucial gathering meant to unite the community and find common ground with Alan. Panic surged within her as she instinctively rushed to her daughter's side. Emma, what do you mean? She whispered urgently, kneeling to meet her eye level. He's outside, he looks different, Emma replied, her voice trembling. Different how? Jessica asked, steeling herself against the flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. He's angry. And he's with someone. Emma's gaze shifted to Alan, anxiety written across her features. Please, just come. With a sinking feeling, Jessica turned to the crowd in the diner, uncertainty blaring like a siren. The townsfolk's eyes reflected her own apprehension, whispers fluttering through the air like frightened birds. Alan stood frozen, processing the shift in energy, his brow furrowing as he glanced between the girls and the startled diners. Let me handle this, Alan said calmly, stepping forward with an air of authority that was completely unexpected. Jessica couldn't fathom how he could remain so composed, especially with her heart racing in dread. She wanted to protect Emma, to shield her from whatever storm was brewing outside. No, she insisted, panic gripping her. I can't let you face him. I know how he can be. Alan turned back to her, those tired eyes locking onto her with an intensity that felt oddly comforting. You're strong, Jessica. But this is something we must confront, together. As if time slowed down, Jessica felt a flicker of doubt. Could she truly trust him? Just moments ago, she was grappling with the idea that he might destroy everything she held dear. Now, here he was, offering his support. It was a complicated web of emotions, and she felt the weight of the diner's spirits resting on their shoulders. Together, she repeated softly, more to herself than to Alan. Steeling her resolve, she took a deep breath, nodding in agreement. All right. Let us do this. With Emma's hand clasped tightly in one of hers and Alan on the other side, they stepped out into the cold air. The din of the diner faded behind them as they emerged onto the bustling street, shadows of their community lingering just behind the windows. Curious, concerned, united, there stood Michael, eyes wild and unsettled, consuming the scene like a jagged rock in a calm river. He was flanked by newly acquainted friends who looked equally bewildered by the crowd gathering at the diner. Jessica's heart raced, and she felt the comforting presence of Alan beside her, a strange alliance forming amidst the tension. Michael, she called, voice steady yet trembling. What are you doing here? His gaze sharpened at the sound of her voice, and with it came a whirlwind of emotions, confusion etching deep lines in his brow. I came to see my daughter. And then I heard Dad. Emma cried, a mix of excitement and anxiety coloring her voice as she pulled ahead. It was a call laced with longing but tethered by familiar fear. As Jessica searched her ex-husband's face, she realized the moment was pivotal. Everything they had built together, the lives intertwined at that diner, converged into this scene. The yearning to protect their child, to find resolution in the chaos swirling around them, echoed in the air thick with emotion, but the unsteady ground they stood upon shook. What revelation would Michael bring to the surface? Would this be a time for healing? Or conflict? In that charged silence, one truth remained clear: nothing would ever be the same again. As the tension crackled like static, the future loomed uncertain, and a single thought echoed in Jessica's mind: could they finally break the cycle of their past, or was more pain yet to come? Jessica felt the world around her tilt as she squared off against the man who had once been her partner, her confidant, and now essentially her greatest fear. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but his words stumbled over one another like spilled marbles, struggled and wild. You have no idea what I've been going through, he blurted, anguish laced with anger. I just wanted to see my daughter. Dad. Emma's voice was a soft plea, cutting through the clamor that bubbled in the air. She looked torn between the two adults in her life, her heart caught in an emotional game. Jessica felt every ounce of her protectiveness flare to life as she looked at Michael. Is this really how you show it? She fired back, the words ringing out sharper than she intended. You think barging into town like this is going to help anyone? Michael recoiled slightly, his eyes flashing with something that resembled hurt. Perhaps he was searching for support among his newfound friends, but they were just as bewildered as everyone else, their faces fading into the background of Jessica's focus. Mom, Emma interjected again, her voice shaky but firm. I just want us to talk. Please. Jessica looked down at her daughter, her heart aching at the sight of her turmoil. With a sigh, she softened her tone. All right, Emma. But I can't let him manipulate you again, she whispered, the worry flooding her thoughts. Michael took a step forward, his energy shifting, some urgency flickered behind his gaze. I just want to make things right. For her. For us. Us? Jessica echoed, incredulous. You're talking about us when we haven't spoken in months. You had your chance, and you blew it. Alan stepped in, his steady presence radiating calm. This is an emotional situation for everyone. How about we all sit down and talk? No shouting, just a conversation. Jessica glanced toward Alan, a flicker of gratitude washing over her. In that moment, she was grateful for someone else who could anchor the storm brewing above her. Michael looked less than pleased at the idea, but his eyes fell on Emma, and that was enough. Fine, he grumbled, though his voice was taut with resistance. She could see the walls around him beginning to crack. Maybe, just maybe, this was an opening. Taking a deep breath, she nodded, gesturing back toward the diner. Once inside, the atmosphere shifted slightly. The murmurs from the townsfolk filled the diner as they peeked through the windows, a mixture of curiosity and concern etched on their faces. Each face told a story of its own, of hope, doubt, and perhaps even judgment. Jessica felt their scrutinizing eyes like a weight on her shoulders. As they all gathered around a booth, Jessica allowed every indignation to settle. First of all, we need to establish some ground rules, she began, her voice firm yet careful. This isn't about us anymore. It's about Emma, and that's it. No fighting, Emma added, squeezing her mother's hand, seeking a sense of solidarity in the fragile moment. What if I say something wrong? Michael's voice dropped, harder to decipher than before. Then we talk it out, Alan interjected, his tone soothing. Just be honest. What do you really want, Michael? Jessica held her breath, waiting for the answer she both craved and feared. The air felt heavy, charged with the potential for change, even if it was dangerous. Maybe this could turn into something productive. A step towards reconciliation, not just for Michael and Emma, but for everyone involved. Could this new dynamic weave through the fabric of their lives, starting anew? Michael opened his mouth, hesitating. The tension coiled tighter, like a string pulled to its limit. What would come spilling out? In that moment, against the backdrop of community eyes and uncertain hearts, everything hung delicately in the balance. Would the weight of the past transgressions be too much to bear? Would this be a breakthrough or a final blow? And then, right as their eyes locked with unspoken challenges, the diner door swung open and a figure stepped in, their face shrouded in shadows, bringing with them an unsettling sense of change. Jessica's heart skipped a beat at the unfamiliar presence. Who were they? What new revelation awaited them now? The newcomer paused by the entrance, the diner's buzzing chatter slowing to a murmur as curious eyes turned toward them. Jessica squinted, trying to discern the figure beyond the dim light. The broad-shouldered silhouette and confident posture hinted at someone not easily intimidated. Can I help you? Alan's voice broke the silence, steady and welcoming despite the tension. The figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a woman in her late 20s. Her fiery red hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with a strange mix of determination and trepidation. She brushed a bead of sweat from her brow, taking in the scene that unfolded before her. I'm sorry to barge in like this, she said, her voice rising over the murmurs. But I think I have something important to say. Jessica felt an immediate sense of unease. What do you know about us? She asked, her protective instincts flaring. Nothing, not yet, the woman replied, holding up her hands in a gesture of goodwill. But I know Michael. We've met before. Michael's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and suspicion darkening his features. What do you mean met? When? The woman took a deep breath, her jaw tightening as if recognizing the gravity of the moment. It was a while back, in a different place, and I didn't know about Emma then. But something happened that day, something that made me realize Michael needs to stop running. The air shifted at her words, a ripple of anticipation moving through the diner. Jessica could see Michael's face soften, the hardness breaking apart layer by layer. "What are you saying?" Michael's voice was low, almost shaky. "I worked at a cafe in Brooklyn. When I met you, you were lost," she said, looking back at Michael as if she could see a glimpse of the man he used to be. "You talked about wanting to mend things with your family. But it felt like you were always waiting for the right moment." Jessica felt her heart race. "You're saying he has been waiting? For what?" "Waiting for the right path. The right choice," the woman clarified, her gaze darting between Michael and Emma. "But sometimes, it takes a push from someone else to realize that we need to face what we've run from. You can keep charging forward, Michael, but that doesn't change the past." Michael shifted, his expression betraying an oncoming storm of emotions. Jessica stood, grappling with everything churning inside her. "Wait, why are you here now?" she pressed, urgency in her voice. "What do you want?" "I came here to reconnect with some old friends, but I think I can also help. I have information that could change everything," the woman said, her eyes locking onto Jessica's with a fierce intention. "The kind of information that might help you all move forward. Together." The words hung in the air. Jessica's pulse raced as her mind raced ahead, envisioning what this unknown woman could reveal, what truths might shatter their fragile moment of reconciliation. "Mom," Emma's small voice pierced the tension, pulling Jessica back from her thoughts. "Can we trust her?" The diner was silent as all eyes settled on them, the weight of any response sending ripples of anxious anticipation through the room. Could this uninvited guest genuinely be the answer they all needed, or would it set them further apart? What could she possibly know that could change their lives? In that shadowy moment, as emotions threatened to fracture the already tenuous situation, Jessica felt the ground beneath them shifting once more. Could they rise toward clarity, or would chaos reign again? The woman took a step closer, her resolve unshaken as she prepared to unveil whatever truth lay ahead. And just as she began to speak, a loud crash echoed outside, breaking the fragile tension once again. What else could possibly happen now? The sudden crash sent a bolt of adrenaline through the diner. Jessica's heart raced as she turned toward the door. The chatter replaced by a hush, everyone held their breath, straining to hear what came next. Outside, a van had overturned on the street, its side crumpled like an old soda can, tires still spinning. Just moments before, patrons had watched the woman enter, now they were staring out the window at the chaos, their collective fear palpable. "Should we call for help?" Alan asked, eyes darting from the woman back to the scene outside. "Not yet," Jessica said, her voice low but firm. "We need to understand what's happening here first." She gestured toward the newcomer, who stood silently, eyes wide as she registered the unfolding drama. Michael clenched his fists, switching his focus between the woman and the source of turmoil outside. "What did you want to tell us?" "If it's important, I don't know how to explain," the woman stuttered, clearly rattled but maintaining her composure. "It's just I think it's connected. The accident, your family, there are things you don't know." "Connected?" Jessica echoed incredulously. "To what?" Her head spun. Was everything crumbling around them, or was this a moment of fate? As if sensing her turmoil, the waitress leaned in a little closer. "I've been trying to find you, Michael. Something happened in Brooklyn that day. But it's more than just our past. The people involved, they're here, right now." Her voice wavered slightly, but the determination in her eyes didn't falter. Emma turned, her little face a mix of confusion and worry. "Mom, what is she talking about?" "Please, just listen," the woman urged, stepping closer to their table as if it offered more than just physical distance. "Not everyone who wanted to help you has the same intentions. Someone not far from here has been waiting for you, too." You've got to trust me on this. This accident, it's just the beginning. Alan finally stepped forward, crossing his arms. What do you know? If this is about Michael, we need to hear it all. Now. I know it sounds crazy, the woman said, her voice strained with urgency, but I've seen the ripples this creates. You think it's just a falling out, a missed connection, but that's not the end of it. There was a pause, the chaos outside felt distant, yet the rising tension in the diner held everyone captive. I have something that can prove it, a clue to understanding. The waitress nodded toward the door, where a man stumbled out of a nearby alley, disheveled and drenched in sweat. He paused, finally meeting their eyes. Recognition flashed before he turned to sprint down the street. People murmured, their eyes darting from Michael to the woman, to the scene outside. Who was that? Jessica's voice had sharpened, instincts flaring. Someone who knows, the red-haired woman asserted, gripping the edge of the table. Someone who can connect everything. But for you to understand, you must confront what your past holds, and that means facing that man. He's the link. Michael shook his head, frustration churning within. Face what? He's nothing to me now. Maybe he was never nothing, the woman replied softly, her words hanging like the scent of fresh rain after a long drought. And if you really want to move forward, the only way is to find out what he knows. Jessica felt the weight of the moment pushing down on her. Would they really need to chase this shadow? The stakes felt impossibly high, but the time for hesitation was over. Do we follow him? She asked, almost doubtful she'd even entertain the idea. Yes, Michael replied, determination resurfacing in his voice. If it leads to understanding, then yes. Before she could react, Alan moved toward the door, determination etched across his face. Let us go, then. As they moved toward the exit, Jessica's mind swirled with uncertainty. What lay ahead? Could this really lead them to the answers they needed, or were they running deeper into trouble? Just as they stepped outside, the distant echo of sirens broke through. The air thickened with tension. Would uncovering the truth bring them closer? Or tear them apart further? The darkness loomed large, shadows mingling with new possibilities as they stepped into the unknown. The street was a chaotic blur. Jessica, Michael, and Alan stepped onto the cracked pavement, the sun flashing off the overturned van's crumpled metal like a warning. The sounds of sirens grew louder, blending with the distant murmurs of onlookers gathering. Jessica glanced back at the diner, feeling as if a part of her was still tethered inside, to safety, but she shook it off. They had to follow this lead. Which way did he go? Alan asked, squinting against the midday sun. Neither Michael nor Jessica knew, but the woman's eyes followed a path up the street, determination evident in her posture. He turned that way, she pointed, her voice steady. If we hurry, we might catch him. Without hesitation, they sprinted after the man who just vanished into the sea of people. Jessica's heart raced. Every step felt heavy with consequence. The questions spinning in her mind were relentless. Who was this man? What did he know? Why did it matter so much? They weaved through the crowd, dodging pedestrians and bumping into occasional street vendors shouting their daily specials. Jessica felt the knot in her stomach tighten as a sense of urgency gripped her. Michael raced ahead, his frustration fueling his pace. Stop! He yelled, voice breaking through the chaos as they rounded a corner. The man was several feet away now, but he turned, and for a moment, their eyes locked across the crowded street. Recognition flashed again, but fear was etched deeper in the man's expression. Michael! Wait! The woman shouted, but it was too late. The man took off, sprinting down a narrow side street away from the others, fear propelling him forward. Let us go. Michael urged, darting after him. Jessica felt a rush of adrenaline as she followed close behind, Alan right at her side. They could lose him, and that thought fueled them to push harder. As they turned down the side street, the layout shifted. The concrete walls rose higher, blocking out the noise of the bustling city and trapping sounds of their hurried footsteps as they closed in. Alleyways branched off, each leading into unknown territories of uncertainty. "Why is he running?" Alan huffed, breathless from the chase. "I think he is scared," Michael responded, keeping his gaze fixed ahead. Arriving at the end of the alley, they skidded to a halt. The man stood there, back pressed against the cold brick wall. His eyes darted, searching for an escape. Tentatively, Jessica stepped forward. "Please, we just want to talk." She called out gently, trying to ease the tension. "We need to know what you know about everything." The man hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossed his face before he glanced back towards the alley's exit. Time stretched like an elastic band ready to snap. "I can't," he stammered, voice shaking, "they'll kill me if I talk." "You don't understand. You don't know what you're getting into." A chill ran down Jessica's spine. Who were they? What danger were they stepping into by trying to uncover the truth? "Listen," the woman spoke, stepping beside Jessica, "we're in this together. We won't let anyone hurt you. We just need answers." Suddenly, the distant sound of sirens grew louder, pressing in on all of them. Michael's voice rose with urgency, "If you don't tell us now, you might not get another chance." With every passing second, the man's resolve crumbled. The conflict in his eyes danced with fear and desperation. "I can help, but it's bigger than just your past." His breaths came quick, panic settling in. "What do you mean?" Jessica pressed, every nerve ending alive with anticipation. The man leaned closer, a wild look in his eyes. "You're not just walking into old wounds. You're stepping into a war." Before he could finish, a crashing sound echoed from the end of the alley, the reality of their chase shifting yet again. Jessica's heart raced anew as she turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, framing a doorway that seemed to pulsate with tension. They had ventured into something much darker, and now there was no turning back. "What now?" Alan whispered, dread creeping into his voice, and just like that, Jessica realized the answer might not just stem from finding out what was connected to their past. The real question was whether they had the courage to face whatever lay ahead. The figure that emerged felt like a ghost from a past they hadn't yet fully understood. Dressed in a dark coat that looked too heavy for the warm afternoon, the man stepped forward, casting a long shadow across the alley. His face was partially obscured, but the glint in his eyes spoke volumes. Jessica's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "Get down!" The man barked, his voice low but urgent. Without waiting for a response, he raised his arm toward the entrance of the alley, where a flash of headlights sliced through the dim light. "What is happening?" Alan shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Trust me," the newcomer said, urgency spilling out in every word. The group dropped to the ground instinctively, the world outside fading into a blur of noise and impending danger. As they crouched in the shadows, Jessica's eyes were fixed on the stricken man, the one who had warned them about the war. He had gone pale, his breathing rapid. She could see he was entrapped in a web of fear far beyond what they had imagined. "They'll find us if we stay here," he muttered, looking at the stranger with desperation. "We have to move." "What war are we stepping into?" Jessica whispered, the weight of everything hanging heavy in the air. She was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, the thrill of the chase, the dread of the unknown. "The kind where truth is a weapon, and lies are a shield," the mysterious man replied, still scanning the alley's entrance. He turned his focus on them, his expression shifting from urgency to something softer. "You have to believe me. I'm here to help, but you have to be ready for this." Michael's frustration bubbled over. "We can't be ready without knowing what we're even facing." "They are the people who want to keep everything buried," the timid man shot back. "And they'll do whatever it takes to silence me, to silence all of you, if they find out you're involved." The tremor in his voice struck Jessica like a lightning bolt. A chilling realization washed over her. They were already involved, whether they liked it or not. It wasn't just about uncovering some hidden truth. They were standing on the precipice of danger. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance to the alley, accompanied by muffled voices that grew closer. Jessica's stomach twisted into knots. Nearly instinctively, she found herself inching closer to the man, desperate for protection. "What do we do?" she whispered, eyes wide with panic. "Follow me," the stranger commanded, urgency pressed into his voice again. He turned swiftly, beckoning them to follow him deeper into the shadows. As they began to move, Michael pulled at Jessica's arm, his eyes flickering with both fear and unyielding determination. "We can't let him down now. We need to know what's at stake." Together, they slipped further into the darkness, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The echo of their heartbeats blended with the distant sirens and the menacing footsteps that were fast approaching. Just as they reached a narrowing corridor, the mysterious figure spun around, blocking their path. "I need you to promise me one thing," he said, his voice low and intense. "Whatever you hear next, don't turn back." Jessica felt the gravity of his words settle deep within her. It was like a bond being forged in the face of uncertainty. She nodded, instinctively entwining her fate with his. As they pressed further into the unknown, facing an uncertain fate, a shiver of both excitement and dread washed over her. She had taken the first step into that war. And she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Then the ground beneath them shook as an explosion lit up the night sky beyond the alley's end. Jessica froze, heart racing, her breath hitching in her throat. What could possibly come next from this chaos? The shockwave knocked Jessica off her feet, slamming her to the cold, gritty ground. Debris rained down around them, and the distant sounds of shattering glass and shouting mixed in with the ringing in her ears. She scrambled to her knees, disoriented and frantically searching for her friends. "Jessica. Are you okay?" Michael's voice broke through the chaos, tattered with concern. "Yeah, I think so. What just happened?" she called back, struggling to catch her breath as she glanced around, trying to regain her bearings. The alley felt different now, more menacing as shadows leaped from the flickering firelight outside. "Stay low," the stranger snapped, surveying the scene. "We need to find cover before they hear us." But Jessica wasn't listening to him. Her eyes were fixed on Alan, who lay motionless a few feet away, his face pale and eyes wide in shock. "Alan!" she shouted, her voice cracking with fear. She crawled toward him, panic surging through her like a tidal wave. He blinked rapidly as she approached, and she could breathe a little easier seeing him alive, even if he looked rattled. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "An explosion. We need to get out of here, now." She felt a rush of tears threaten to spill over her anxiety, but she shoved it down. There was no time for that. "Get back!" the man shouted again, his urgency intensifying. "If they've already seen us, we are in deep trouble. We can't stay out in the open." With Alan leaning against her for support and Michael close behind, they all pushed further into the corridor. Desperation gnawed at Jessica. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe. I promise, just trust me," he insisted, darting down a narrow passage. The narrow corridor twisted and turned, shadows leaping off the walls with every flickering glow of the distant firelight. Jessica's heart raced not just from fear but also from adrenaline coursing through her veins. The air felt thick with an impending storm, everything was alive, electric. Suddenly, the stranger halted, pulling back on a heavy metal door just up ahead. "In here." He shoved the door open, revealing a dimly lit room that smelled of damp stone and old machinery. It was a stark contrast to the chaos outside. As everyone squeezed inside, the man quickly shut the door behind them, the dull thud echoing in the silence. They huddled close, the darkness closing in, their breaths coming in quick bursts. "Do you have a plan?" Michael asked, his voice low but fierce. "Yes," the man began, running a hand through his hair, visibly shaken but resolute. "But first, you all need to understand exactly what we are facing. If they find us, if they find you, it won't just be me in danger. Jessica swallowed hard, her mind racing. This was beyond anything she had imagined when they decided to unravel the mystery of the war. Who are they? She pushed, needing the truth now. You said they want to silence us. Why? The man took a deep breath, the silence echoing with tension. Because you hold the key to everything. His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, Jessica saw vulnerability mixed with desperation. You need to understand, the truth you're searching for is a weapon. Just then, a loud bang reverberated from the door, followed by voices shouting in harsh tones. The group shot anxious glances at each other, realization hitting them like a tidal wave. It's too late, the man breathed, stepping protectively in front of them. They are here. As the door rattled with force, Jessica's heart clenched. They were on the front lines of a battle they never wanted to fight. And for the first time, she couldn't ignore the lurking dread that it was only going to get worse. Whatever happens next, we have to stick together, she urged, clutching her friend's hands. The door burst open, and the shadows of several figures flooded into the room like a nightmare made real. Jessica braced herself, terror and determination intertwining inside her. What awaited them on the other side of that threshold? Would they find salvation, or had they just stepped deeper into the darkness? The figures tumbled into the room, their faces obscured by shadows and the dim light. Jessica's heart raced as fear spiraled through her. She strained to see, feeling the tension thick in the air like a heavy fog. The stranger's body nearly blocked her view, but from what she could see, the intruders were armed and dangerous. Stay back. The man shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Jessica couldn't tell if he was addressing them or the newcomers. The entities moved with a menacing grace, sizing them up as they regained composure. Do you really think you can hide from us? One of the figures sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. You're out of time. Jessica felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something chilling in his words, as if he knew exactly what they had stumbled into, the consequences they faced. Enough of this cat-and-mouse game, another figure said, stepping into the weak light. For an instant, Jessica caught a glimpse of a familiar face. It was someone she thought she could trust, someone from the protests, now twisted into an instrument of fear. Hand over the data, and maybe we'll spare your lives. Never, the stranger beside her growled, his tone steady but brimming with defiance. He planted himself firmly in front of the others, eyes locked on the intruders. Jessica swallowed hard as she felt the weight of uncertainty. Data? What data? Jessica. Alan's voice pulled her focus back. We need to find a way out now. Right. But how? She replied, adrenaline flooding her veins. She glanced up at the door behind them, but the claustrophobic room felt like a cage. The intruders were advancing, checking for escape routes. Desperation gnawed at her around the edges. Look for another exit. Michael urged, urgency coding his words. They began to scour the dim room. Jessica stumbled over discarded crates and old machinery, every creak echoing like a lightning bolt inside her chest. I found she began, but then a loud crack echoed off the walls. Instinctively, she dropped to the ground, hiding behind an old workbench. As she peered out, the scene unfolded like a twisted play. The intruders were trying to close in, while the man fought back, creating a distraction. Go, go, go. He shouted at them, nodding toward a small window high up on the wall. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. It was a tight squeeze, but it was their only way out. Help me. She called, waving her arms. Alan and Michael pushed her forward. They needed to escape, to find safety before the chaos consumed them. As the men continued their stressful standoff, she climbed onto a crate, reaching for the window. Her fingers grazed the rough edge, and for an agonizing moment, she focused on the others, waiting for them to join her. They were moving, scrambling, but the danger was escalating. The man shouted again, but this time his voice was filled with desperation. Go. Now. With a sudden burst of strength, she hoisted herself up, pulling her body through the opening. Outside, the night air hit her like a splash of cold water, sharp, refreshing, and full of hope. Come on. She shouted down to her friends. They needed each other now more than ever. Alan leaped up after her, muscles straining, fear cracking his face. Michael followed, but just as he slipped through, a roar of rage erupted from inside the room. Stop them. A voice bellowed, and in that instant, Jessica's heart plummeted. They were free but exposed. How much time did they have before the darkness caught up with them again? Rushing down the alley, they could hear footsteps behind, each echoing thud, a reminder of the danger they carried with them. Overwhelmed, Jessica looked back at the looming shadows, knowing they were not done yet. Was this truly only the beginning? What awaited them in the treacherous world they'd plunged into? The ground still trembled beneath them as Jessica, Alan, and Michael sprinted from the alley, hearts pounding, breaths short. The cool night air seemed electric with urgency, the vivid lights from the city shining defiantly against the encroaching darkness. They had made it out, but fear clung to them like fog, a constant reminder of the danger still lurking. Where do we go? Alan gasped, glancing behind them, eyes wide with dread. The sounds of footsteps faded, but the threat loomed large in their minds. Anywhere but here, Jessica replied, pushing forward. We need to find somewhere safe to regroup. Together they navigated through the labyrinth of streets, their movements frantic but synchronized, driven by adrenaline. The city seemed alive, shadows dancing across walls, cars rushing past like fleeting moments. With every step, Jessica stole a glance at Michael, searching for signs of the man she once knew, the father of her daughter. A flicker of familiarity shone in his eyes, mingling with regret and confusion, but she couldn't let herself focus on that now. They turned a corner and spotted a small park that seemed oddly quieter, trees swaying gently in the wind as if beckoning them to find shelter in its embrace. Jessica led the way, ushering them behind a cluster of bushes, the moonlight cloaking their presence. What happened back there? Michael finally spoke, voice heavy with gravity. Why were they after you? The stranger, still hanging close, glanced at Jessica, urging her to take the lead in this conversation. The weight of her newfound knowledge pressed down on her, and she took a deep breath before launching into an explanation. That woman at the diner, she started. She said we hold the key to everything. I don't even know what that means, but it feels like we've stepped into something bigger. They wanted data, Alan interjected, concern etched across his face. What data? What are we wrapped up in? Something that connects all of us, our pasts, our choices, the stranger filled in, urgency threading through his words. You're part of something that could change lives if you're brave enough to face it. Tension crackled in the air as they processed this, minds racing to connect the dots. Jessica's thoughts spiraled to the memories tucked away in the corners of her heart. Michael, the life they once had, the dreams that felt lost under the weight of his choices. But what do we do now? Michael spoke again, determination flickering in his voice. How do we fight back? We can't keep running. For the first time, the stranger's expression softened, as if he realized they were ready to grasp the weight of their situation. We need to uncover the truth behind what they want. Once we do that, we can expose their actions, bring light to the darkness they hide behind. Jessica felt a rush of purpose ignite within her. Emerging from the shadows could be daunting, but stepping away would mean allowing fear to dictate their lives. We can't be afraid anymore, she stated, eyes brightening. We have to confront whatever lies ahead together. We owe it to ourselves to Emma. Michael nodded fervently, his expression shifting from despair to resolve. I was lost for so long, but I need to be here for her. I want to make things right. For all of us. Alan stepped forward. Then let us find out what this is truly about. No more hiding. We expose them together. The air around them shimmered with shared determination as their hands joined in a circle, a makeshift pact stamped with the promise of unity. However perilous the path ahead, it was one they would face together. With the newfound strength and commitment burning in their hearts, they made their way back toward the diner, where it had all started. They understood now, standing strong as a community meant digging deeper, uncovering truths hidden beneath layers of misunderstanding and fear. Together, they could reshape their lives, reinvent their futures amidst the looming uncertainty. The stars above sparkled brightly, a blanket of hope illuminating their journey forward. They stepped out of the shadows into the light of possibility, ready to take back their stories, their lives, and their futures, all marked by the indelible spirit of resilience that connected them. And as they moved toward this new dawn, uncertainty still lingered on the horizon, but so too did the promise of change, a change they would face hand in hand. Now is the time to take action. You need to subscribe now to catch all the upcoming stories. This is the moment to show your support by hitting that like button. Comment your thoughts about this exhilarating ending. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who deserve to experience this unforgettable transformation.